The first thing I noticed when Celine Marlowe asked me to be her date was not her voice, or the way she stood in my office doorway like she owned the building, or even the strange softness in her eyes that I had never seen before. It was the invitation card trembling between her fingers. Celine never trembled. Not in board meetings, not during client storms, not when our boss compared our numbers in front of the whole floor and made us both fight for the same promotion like two dogs circling one bone. But that Tuesday morning, with sunlight pouring through the glass walls of Greybridge Media and the city shining like it had no idea anyone was breaking inside, my work rival looked at me and asked me to walk into her past with her. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ancient Truth if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when people choose compassion over pride. My name is Rowan Vale, and for 3 years, Celine Marlowe had been the one person I tried hardest not to understand. She was brilliant, sharp, controlled, and impossible to ignore. She arrived before everyone, left after most people had already forgotten the office existed, and spoke in meetings with the calm precision of someone who had already solved the problem while the rest of us were still reading the first page. I respected her, but I did not trust her. She respected me, maybe, but she never let me forget I was standing between her and the executive chair we both wanted. We competed over campaigns, clients, budgets, presentations, and even silence. If I stayed late, she stayed later. If I landed a client, she landed one bigger. If I smiled at a victory, she smiled like she had already planned the next war. That morning, she walked into my office without knocking, wearing a navy dress beneath a tailored coat, her hair pinned neatly, her face composed except for those fingers holding the cream-colored wedding invitation. I was expecting another fight about the Sutter account, or another cold correction about a proposal I had sent the night before. Instead, she placed the invitation on my desk and said she needed a favor. I almost laughed, because Celine Marlowe did not ask for favors. She negotiated outcomes. She controlled rooms. She made people feel like helping her had been their idea. But this was different. Her voice was low, almost embarrassed, and when I picked up the card, I saw 2 names embossed in gold, Callan Royce and Mira Ashford. The wedding was that Saturday, at a vineyard estate outside the city, during the bright golden hours of the afternoon. Callan Royce. I knew the name. Everyone in our industry knew it. He was a rising investor, handsome in that polished magazine way, charming when cameras were present, ruthless when they weren't. I also knew, through office whispers, that he had once been engaged to Celine. No one knew the real reason it ended. Some said she had chosen work over love. Some said he had left her for someone wealthier. Some said Celine had no heart to break in the first place. I had never asked. Rivalry has its own kind of cruelty, it convinces you that not knowing someone's pain gives you power over them. I asked her why me, and she looked out the window as if the answer was somewhere between the skyscrapers. She said she needed someone who would not pity her. Someone who could stand beside her without asking too many questions. Someone who knew how to survive in rooms full of people pretending to be kind. That should have made me refuse. It sounded like a trap, a humiliation waiting to happen, some strange game where I would end up looking foolish in front of half the city's elite. But beneath her calm words was a tiredness so deep it pulled something human out of me. So I said yes. For the rest of the week, the office felt different. Celine and I still exchanged professional emails, still challenged each other in meetings, still wore our armor, but something invisible had shifted. On Thursday, I saw her in the break room staring at a cup of untouched coffee while sunlight fell across her face. She looked younger somehow, not weaker, just more real. I wanted to ask what had happened with Callan, but I remembered what she had said. No pity. No questions. So I only told her I would drive on Saturday, and she nodded without looking at me. Saturday arrived with a sky so clear it felt almost staged. Daylight washed everything in soft gold as my car rolled through the hills toward the vineyard. Celine sat beside me in a champagne-colored dress that made her look elegant and distant, like someone carved out of calm. She had brought a small gift wrapped in white paper and tied with a silver ribbon. Her hands rested on it the whole drive. For nearly 30 minutes, we said nothing except small practical things about directions and timing. Then, just as the vineyard appeared beyond rows of sunlit grapes, she whispered that no matter what happened, I should not leave her side during the vows. The estate was beautiful in the cruel way expensive places can be beautiful, all white roses, polished stone, crystal glasses, soft violin music, and smiling guests who looked like they had been chosen for a commercial about perfect lives. The ceremony was set outdoors beneath a floral arch, with chairs arranged on a wide green lawn facing the hills. People turned when Celine entered. Some smiled too brightly. Some looked away too quickly. A few whispered behind raised champagne flutes. I felt her stiffen beside me, but her chin never lowered. She walked like a queen entering a court that had already sentenced her. Callan saw her before we reached our seats. He stood near the arch in a cream suit, laughing with his groomsmen, until his eyes landed on Celine. The laugh faded, then returned in a performance so smooth most people would have missed the crack. His bride, Mira, stood at a distance taking photos with bridesmaids. She was beautiful, soft-faced, wrapped in lace and sunlight, smiling like a woman who believed the day belonged entirely to love. I wondered if she knew what kind of shadow stood behind the man she was about to marry. Celine introduced me to no one. She simply held my arm and guided us to seats near the middle, close enough to see everything, far enough not to be accused of drama. But drama came anyway. Before the ceremony began, Callan approached us with his polished smile and cold eyes. He greeted Celine like an old friend, told her she looked well, then looked at me as if measuring my price. Celine introduced me as her date. There was a flicker of surprise in his expression, then amusement. He said he was glad she had found someone willing to accompany her. The insult was gentle enough for strangers to miss, sharp enough for her to bleed from it. I felt her fingers tighten around my arm. I do not know what made me answer. Maybe it was the way she kept standing straight even while he tried to make her small. Maybe it was the fact that, for the first time, I realized our rivalry had only shown me her strength, never the cost of carrying it. I smiled at Callan and said I was honored she chose me, because not many people were worth standing beside in a room like this. His smile thinned. Celine looked at me for half a second, and in that glance, something changed. The ceremony began under bright afternoon sun. The guests rose, the music swelled, and Mira walked down the aisle with tears shining in her eyes. Callan played the perfect groom. He touched his chest. He bowed his head. He looked overwhelmed by love. But Celine had gone still beside me. Not tense. Not angry. Still. Like someone listening for footsteps in a house she thought she had escaped. When the officiant began speaking about love, loyalty, and truth, I noticed Celine's breathing change. Her hand moved slowly to the silver ribbon on the gift in her lap, not opening it, just touching it. Then came the vows. Mira read first. Her voice trembled with hope as she spoke about being chosen, about feeling safe, about believing Callan had taught her what love could be. People cried. Even I felt the sweetness of it, until I looked at Celine and saw a tear slide silently down her cheek. Then Callan unfolded his paper. He began beautifully. He spoke about destiny, second chances, and how love sometimes arrives after pain. But then his words shifted. He said there had been a time when he thought ambition was love, when he had mistaken coldness for strength, when he had stood beside someone who could not make room for tenderness. He did not say Celine's name, but he looked directly at her. So did half the guests. The air changed. The ceremony became a stage, and she became the sacrifice. My stomach tightened. Celine did not move. Callan continued, saying Mira had healed what someone else had broken, that she had shown him a woman could be successful without becoming hard, loved without making a man feel unnecessary. The words were dressed as devotion, but they were a blade. I finally understood why Celine had asked me not to leave her side. She had known. Or feared. Or maybe she had been invited not as a guest, but as proof of his victory. And then something happened that no one expected. Mira stopped smiling. At first it was small, just a flicker around her eyes. Then she lowered her bouquet. Callan continued reading, unaware that the woman in front of him was no longer hearing romance. She was hearing cruelty. She was hearing how easily he could turn a sacred promise into public revenge. When he finished, the silence was not tender. It was stunned. Mira looked at Celine. Not with jealousy. Not with triumph. With horror. Then she turned back to Callan and asked, in front of everyone, whether those vows were meant for her or against someone else. Callan laughed softly, trying to recover, but Mira stepped back. The officiant froze. Guests shifted in their chairs. Celine's hand trembled against my sleeve. Callan reached for Mira, but she did not let him touch her. She said love was not proven by humiliating another woman. She said if he still needed an audience for his bitterness, then his heart was not standing at the altar with her. Her voice broke, but she did not break. The vineyard went silent except for the wind moving through the roses. Callan's face changed then. The charm fell away. He accused Celine of ruining everything just by showing up. He said she always had to win, always had to be seen, always had to make him look small. And there it was, the truth beneath the velvet. It had never been that Celine was too cold. It was that Callan could not bear a woman whose light did not depend on him. Celine stood slowly. I stood with her. She did not defend herself with anger. She did not throw back accusations. She only looked at Mira and said she was sorry, not for coming, but for not warning her sooner. Then she placed the white gift on the chair. The ribbon had come loose, revealing a small framed photograph inside. It showed Celine and Callan from years ago, standing at a charity event, both smiling, both younger. On the back, written in Celine's careful handwriting, were the words, "May you be loved without being reduced." Mira read it. Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears were different. She removed the veil from her hair and handed her bouquet to her maid of honor. Then she walked away from the altar, not dramatically, not running, just walking with the painful dignity of someone choosing herself in daylight. The wedding did not continue. Guests scattered into whispered groups. Callan disappeared into the estate with his family. The musicians packed up quietly. Somewhere, a glass shattered. Celine and I walked toward the vineyard path beneath a sky still golden and indifferent. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she sat on a stone bench between rows of grapes and finally let herself cry. She told me everything then. How Callan had loved her confidence at first, then resented it. How he had corrected her clothes, mocked her long hours, called her ambition selfish, then borrowed her ideas for his own deals. How he proposed in public after a fight because he knew she would feel trapped into saying yes. How she left him 3 months before the wedding they had planned, not because she did not love him, but because loving him had started to feel like disappearing. When he invited her to his new wedding, she suspected it was meant to prove she had been replaced. But she came because part of her still needed to stop being afraid of rooms where people misunderstood her. I listened. Not as her rival. Not as someone waiting for weakness to use later. Just as a man ashamed that he had mistaken her guardedness for arrogance. I told her that at work, I had spent years trying to beat her because I thought she looked down on me. She laughed through tears and said she had spent years trying to beat me because I was the only one who never treated her like a decoration. The truth was so simple it hurt. We had both been lonely behind our weapons. When we returned to the city, the sunlight had softened into late afternoon. Monday came like any other Monday, except nothing was the same. Celine and I did not suddenly become gentle people who agreed on everything. We still challenged each other. We still fought for good ideas. But the cruelty was gone. Competition became collaboration. Sharpness became honesty. We built the Sutter campaign together, and it became the most successful launch Greybridge had seen in years. Months later, when the promotion was announced, everyone expected only one of us to win. Instead, Celine walked into the boardroom and presented a proposal for a shared leadership model. I thought she was risking everything. But she looked at me across that long glass table with the same steady courage she had shown at the vineyard and said the best results came when people stopped confusing power with loneliness. The board agreed. We became co-directors. And somewhere between late nights, difficult pitches, quiet coffees, and the strange peace of being understood by someone who had once been my enemy, I stopped calling Celine my rival. I did not rush to name what she became after that. Some things deserve to grow without being forced into words. But I knew this much: the woman I once tried to defeat had taught me that strength is not the absence of pain. Sometimes strength is walking into a room designed to shame you and leaving with your heart still capable of kindness. Near the end of that year, we received a handwritten letter from Mira. She had moved to another city, started over, and thanked Celine for showing her what Callan's vows could not hide. She wrote that the worst day of her life had saved the rest of it. Celine read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. She did not cry that time. She smiled. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Ancient Truth. Your support helps stories of kindness, courage, and second chances reach more hearts. Comment kindness wins if you believe the right person can stand beside you at the exact moment your world tries to break you. In the end, I went to that wedding thinking I was doing my rival a favor. I thought I was only there to fill a seat, hold an arm, and help her survive a cruel afternoon. But I was wrong. Celine did not need me because she was weak. She asked me because even the strongest people deserve someone beside them when the past tries to rewrite their story. And I did not know why she chose me until the vows, when one man's bitterness revealed two women's courage, and a rivalry that had once been built on pride became the beginning of something far more powerful: trust.